What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of How to Scale an Agency. I hope you're excited for today's episode because today we have very special guest, David Jenyns, who's actually come on for the second time on the podcast. I was just looking back, it was about 2.5 years ago he was first on the show. So I'm really looking forward to diving in for a part two, seeing what's new in his world. You might remember a little bit about his story from the last show, but Dave is the founder of Systemize, which has helped thousands of entrepreneurs systemize their business and buy back their time. I look at it like a modern day e-myth, and it's helped me and my business a lot. He's got a book on it, which he's generous enough to actually send a free copy to everyone in the audience. So we'll share more about that at the end of the show, how to get your free book. And yeah, Dave's story is really cool. He's built multiple businesses out in Australia, and one of his agencies, Melbourne SEO, was what caused him to start the systems journey because he got pregnant. Well, not him, but his wife. His wife got pregnant, and yes, that's when he realized, like, hey, I can't keep working this hard. Like, I need to create my business so that I can run itself. And that's what led him down the systems journey and gave him the passion to just help others with this. And now he's created a whole movement. So really excited to dive in, pick his brain. And yeah, welcome to the show, Dave.
Hey, AJ, awesome to see you again. Time flies.
Yeah, definitely, man. I can't believe it's been 2.5 years. Feels like it was just yesterday. But yeah, I think so for everyone listening, I actually just republished the part one of this just a week ago so that you guys can actually listen to the part one and the part two. Today we're gonna dive into more of like what's changed in the systems world and some more advanced things and kind of building the foundation from last time. So if you cheated and skipped to part two, definitely go back and listen to part one because it's gonna really connect both well together. But yeah, the first episode was awesome. So I'm really just glad to dive in further today. Because I think it is so important. So I want to just touch on this first is like, why is systems important, David? Because a lot of people, they have resistance to it. It's hard work, or they think it's hard work, or they just kind of ignore it, or they think it's not for them. So I just want to kind of get people bought into like why it's so important to go down this journey of systemizing the business.
Unless you systemize a business, you'll never build a business of your dreams, the business that can work independently of you, that can generate profits. The reality is a lot of agency owners, they just have a job. And when they're not working, the business isn't generating money. And whenever there's a problem, whether it's with clients or with staff, everybody's coming back to you as that business owner. And it's not a great place to be. And the only way to build a business that generates profit, that works independently of you, is with systems. So this is a bridge that you must cross at some point in time. And the longer that you leave it, the harder it becomes because you get stuck in your ways, your team members get stuck in their ways. And as you grow and more people come on board, it becomes harder and harder to change culture. So it's never going to be any easier than it is right now. And we'll talk about some of the changes that have happened as well, which really just makes it infinitely easier. But I think intuitively, a lot of business owners know that systems and processes produce better outcomes for themselves and for their clients. So, and it's quite common for business owners to go, yeah, but I'm not a systems person, or I tried this before in the past and it didn't work, and they abandon it. And it's possible if you're not or you don't see yourself as a systems person, you can still own a systems driven business.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I liked you said on our last podcast was that, so you were able to eventually sell your agency by being able to systemize it, right? But what you were saying was even if you don't want to sell the business, you still systemizing the business gives you the options. It gives you the option to sell it. It gives you the option to take advantage of opportunities because otherwise you're just kind of chained to just working in the business, right? So I think that's really, really important too.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. You might not even notice how many opportunities are falling in your lap just because you're caught in the daily grind. Systems gives you a chance to have some perspective, to be able to step back and then notice the big opportunities and take advantage of them. I mean, that was a big theme at the start of the Systemology book, was a huge opportunity that fell into my lap, which I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of unless I'd got the business to that point in time. And really, that's what every business owner should be striving for.
Definitely. And why do you think that a lot of entrepreneurs don't feel like they're systems persons or have systems people or have resistance to it?
Yeah, it's quite common for the founder who's a visionary or a big picture thinker to not think in terms of systems, or it to not be their default way of doing things. Like all of the habits that help them to grow their business and get it off the ground, while it's great to get the business off the ground, they tend to hold the business owner at a certain level, because you have to move quickly, you have to prioritize, attend to whatever is most urgent and in your lap and getting it done. You're over indexing on how you're supporting clients. You're often the salesperson, and then you're so particular with making sure that the client gets great results that you bend over backwards and train everybody that, oh yes, this business owner is just going to step in and be the knight in shining armor whenever there's a problem. And that's great. It'll help you get to a certain point. And that's why your clients love you, because you deliver these great outcomes for them. But then something happens where you'll start to hit this ceiling and you can't grow through it. And if it is always you that's jumping in, then you're in trouble. But a lot of business owners, they don't know how to break those old habits because they've been reinforced. Oftentimes the business owner can have great success getting the business up to a certain size, and then they think that their success is tied to those actions and those behaviors. And oftentimes a lot of business owners, they don't have a picture in their head of how their business can work without them. As in, when they think about their business, they see themselves in it, and they haven't had the experience of their business generating profits without them. And that's one of the first things that we try and work on, is if we can give the business owner the experience of making money when it wasn't dependent on them, as in the lead came in, that was converted, the product or service was delivered, and it's handed back to the client and they're happy. And if that can happen without the business owner, that's the first thing that we try and work on. Then the business owner has a different paradigm. They go, I can see this can work for me. I've seen it before. Yet a lot of business owners don't have that experience, which then makes it very hard for them to manage or think about a business that could deliver that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, thinking back to my own journey, there's no better feeling than just seeing a client lead come in, client come in, they get onboarded, delivered, and you didn't have to touch it. It's like, oh my God, that was just magic, right? And then you get kind of addicted to buy Dave's book and just go down the rabbit hole of systems for sure.
Yeah. Then you're like, I want more of this. And that's when you move from just being an employee of a business you own, which is what a lot of agency owners are. They're really just employees of their own agency, as opposed to a business owner, which takes on a different role. And it's the classic thing Michael Gerber used to always talk about, which is it's one thing to be the technician and know how to do the technical work. It's another to run a business that delivers the technical work. And it's a completely different set of skills that someone's got to learn. And it's really trying to help business owners connect those dots.
Yeah, well, I think you brought up a really important point, how the way that, people used to operate at, or they do operate at that smaller level to get the business off the ground is totally different than how they need to operate later. And I think that's why a lot of people do get stuck, because like you said, it is positively reinforcing, right? By being just that person that just hustles constantly, goes out as the face of the brand, talks to all the clients, delivers for all the clients, you know that like, this is what's got me to where I am. So to think about doing it totally differently, it's kind of scary and you can't imagine it, right? There's a little bit of fear of letting go, but I think that's kind of what the fun thing is about the entrepreneurial journey, is that you have to kind of reinvent yourself at each stage. And that's why you keep on learning and growing.
Yeah. And I had the opportunity, I talk about it in the book when I worked closely with Michael Gerber, and I found it really eye-opening that, he's often seen as the godfather of small business systems, but he doesn't document process. He's really not that systemized when it comes to it, but he's recognized how important it is, and he's surrounded himself with systems-driven people. So he's really creative and he tends not to follow process, but he's recognized how important it is. And so he's made sure that the rest of his team does, to kind of really make up for where he's weak. So that kind of gave me a little bit of a, you know what, as a creative founder, it's actually quite natural and normal. And as long as you realize how important the systems and the processes are, and now that we know that systems-driven companies run better, they get better outcomes for clients, for the staff, for profits. We know that that's a given. So you should be thinking about recruiting team members that resonate with the systems message. Like, if we know that there are two types of people in this world, there are people who follow systems and there's people who don't, well then just make sure when you're recruiting people that you recruit people that understand and appreciate process. It should be part of your recruitment process, and then it actually makes your business that much easier.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's what I really want to dive into further today is, how do we build it? So the last episode, we kind of covered the foundation, the steps, how do you go about systemizing. We want to go into more about how do we get the team on board today. So I think that's going to be super, super valuable. That to me, that's probably the biggest takeaway I got from your book in the last podcast we did was the thing that was the most helpful for me was realizing that I don't need to be the one building the systems. Because I also had that limiting belief that I'm not a systems person, and I always thought like, oh, I just need eventually an operations person; they'll figure it all out. But then I realized like, no, you have to build it into the business, but you can be the one to kind of engineer the systems, but not actually building it. Like you're not sitting there obviously scribbling away at SOPs, right?
Yes.
I know you don't like
Yeah.
to do it. So yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things there. I think one thing when Michael read the book, he gave me one bit of advice and he said, don't let the business owner off the hook. Because
Yeah.
he said, you write the book and you make it sound like, everybody else is going to systemize the business and the business owner can abdicate responsibility. And he said, it's not quite the case. While the business owner might not be rolling up their sleeves and documenting those SOPs, they need to be the ones that lead it. They need to say to the team, this is important. We're going to put time, money, and energy and resources behind it. The business owner really should understand and start to see their business as a collection of systems. And when they're in the business in particular, they need to follow the systems. They're not really above the law in that circumstance. So there's a little bit about that. And then it is getting the right person to really champion that in the business. And since we last chatted, it's actually gotten so much easier to systemize a business. And I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see where AI takes this and when AI agents really take over and then can execute on some of these tasks. But the whole process of documentation using ChatGPT is now, I mean, it used to be worth the investment beforehand when you had to do it manually. But now we can do it in 1/10 the time by leveraging some of these tools and get a fantastic outcome. You're really quite negligent if you're not doing this in your business.
Yeah. Because now it's just like even easier, right? It's like handed on a silver platter with these tools, right?
Yeah. Like for an SOP, you record yourself doing the task, you get it transcribed, you head over Chat GPT and ask it to draft up a process and create a little checklist for you. You pair that together with the video, and now you got the little checklist. And now you've made an SOP, and that's version number 1. And it's really easy to then start to delegate out some of those tasks. So then, I mean, that's the whole thing with AI also, and why process is so important right now is these AI tools are popping up and they're able to do so many different things. And new business owners, especially in the marketing space from a digital agency point of view, there's, different graphical software that can punch out 300 cat images with your product in it, and it can automatically squirt it out onto every social media platform under the sun. And the reality is, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah.
And it's so important now to go, what is essential in business? What are the core tasks? And you should then be asking the question, what are we currently doing that's critical that AI can do faster, cheaper, and better? So rather than adding new stuff in, you want to look for where the AI can leverage what you're currently doing. And that's where the game is. And where I think a lot of people go wrong is they're chasing these shiny objects thinking, AI is going to save them. But you have to figure out who your target audience is, what's your primary product or service that you're selling them, and what are the core things that you have to do to attract them, convert them, deliver for them. And then how can we layer AI over the top to do parts of that?
Yeah. And I think it's really great advice because when I first heard about AI, I went through that phase of just like doing all these random things that didn't actually help the business just because, oh, this is cool. Look at this tool, right?
Yeah.
Look at this feature. But then I kind of reverted back to, okay, let's look at our customer journey, or as you call it, the critical client flow, that diagram kind of maps out the core steps, and then just see where can we use AI here, right? Like where can we use it to just make what we're already doing faster and better?
Yeah. And I mean, in that journey that you talked about, the critical client flow, anything to do with content creation underneath attention, I mean, ChatGPT and Claude and some of those tools work really well. Whether it's drafting proposals, I mean, I know you do some really cool stuff in the cold outreach space. There's a lot of tools now that are scraping LinkedIn and then customizing and tailoring the cold outreach emails to hyper personalize. Like there's a lot of opportunity now for where it can be applied.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely changed the cold outreach game for sure. But I think it seems like most of the use cases I'm seeing from other entrepreneurs is really in the marketing side. So that's where it does save a lot of time for sure.
And look, oftentimes the people that you talk with most will look through their lens and tell you how they're using it. I'm seeing it also in a lot of other departments as well. Marketing's an obvious one. I'm actually seeing seeing a bit in some finance and also in delivery. I'm also seeing it in sales, a lot in recruitment. So it does work really well. Like, I mean, recruitment, I saw this one system the other day that I thought was brilliant. It would help you draft out the position description, figure out the questions to ask, and then it would turn those questions into like an AI that, like a computer generated video of the person asking the question. And then it would set up an interview, like a pre-screening interview series. People would, the robot's asking the questions and people reply, and then it transcribes, and then it puts all of your candidates together, and then it does the analysis on their responses and matches it against a disc profile, and then puts forward the top 3 candidates out of the 100 people that replied that you didn't chat with any of them, and then says, these are the top 3 candidates we endorse. And that type of innovation is happening in every industry, in every sector, in every market, in every department. Like this, I don't know if most small business has recognized the impact that this is going to have. It's going to be extraordinary.
Yeah, I think it's insane. I think we see it a lot, right, in our space, especially just being online businesses, right, or largely online businesses. But I always think about the rest of the world, like these traditional businesses, construction companies, restaurants, insurance businesses, whatever. I think we think that they're all like seeing AI all over their feel like we are, but they don't even realize it, right? It's like we're kind of at the forefront, right?
Yeah.
But it's going to be everywhere. Yeah.
So, I was going to say with the whole AI, and if we know that that's the direction that things are headed, which we do, and the genie is out of the bottle, and certain industries will move quicker than others, it will catch up across the board. The one thing I keep coming back to, it's the same if you're using AI really as business fundamentals. Like, what are the core tasks that you're getting done? And I actually see that the systems that you document today will become the programming of the machines tomorrow. So at some point, as you document some of these tasks, that will then be able to be fed into an AI agent that will then go and execute on some of these tasks as well. So again, that's one of the reasons why I see there's never been a more critical time to systemize, and it's never been easier also. Like, now's the time to over-index on process and getting very clear on what's essential and the way that you do things.
Right. Because once it gets more accessible and possible what AI can do to just execute tasks, then the people that have all the systems and documentations will be the first to benefit from that. Makes total sense. I'm sure eventually you could just take an SOP, have AI just write you a piece of code for that. Hey, turn this into a little widget and then just do this for me, right?
Yeah. So I work with an accountant here in Australia, and there's a task that she used to do manually, or not her. She had 20 accountants underneath her, and one of the tasks is they log into the ATO, the Australian Tax Office, and every week to see if there's any communication that's been sent through to the ATO to their clients. Each client has their own little portal. So it was a job for someone to log in, scan it, scrape any of the communication, give it a quick review, see if anything needs to be actioned, and then forward it on to the clients. So she had written out a process on how this was done, and then went and got some robotic or automation stuff. She went to a coder and said, well, this is what I do manually. Can we create a little robot that can do this? And they ended up creating something, saved her well over 1,000 hours every year just with this one little robot that she's created. And at the moment, that's going through some sort of automation expert. As the AI gets smarter, yes, you will just ask the AI to do it. Like, that's them coding something up. But soon enough, the AI will be smart enough to just do it. So it's you can still get some incredible wins now doing it a little bit more manually, but shortly you won't even have to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Definitely exciting time to be an entrepreneur for sure. So then what other tips or best practices would you recommend just in terms of using AI in the systemization process? I think you already mentioned a really good one, which is, you could use it right at the beginning when you just create that initial video of you doing a task, have it write the SOP for you. Anything else that you're, really advising entrepreneurs as far as bringing this into the process?
We have been using it really, it's retraining yourself and the team that firstly, just like we used to just Google it, if you got a question, just go Google it. really now you want to be just chat GPT it and training the team to do that. As you're going through the systemization process, it will help you with the critical client flow and identifying essential systems. It'll help you define your departments and what are the essential systems in each of those departments. It'll help you draft things up and spot gaps. And so there's all around that, everything to do with systemization now can be accelerated and the quality can be increased by using AI. And then like where I think things are going, I mean, we're seeing more and more this ability to train AI. And I mean, you can use SOPs as a piece of training data. So we're experimenting more now with training effectively different AI for different roles. So you have your marketing assistant that's trained on all of your marketing SOPs, and you'll have, and then teams can then make that available to their team members. So it's like you've got your own AI assistant that's trained on the data that's relevant to your role. So, I mean, there's a couple of different use cases. I think the key here with the adoption, it's the same with getting systems and processes adopted. You need the team to understand how, or have them see how this benefits them. So for example, AI, if team members want to get paid more, which they do, for that to work for the business, they need to be providing more value and getting more output. The way for them to do that at the moment is if they do embrace AI and some of these technology things, they'll be able to get 3, 4, 5, 10x the amount of output, which makes it possible to pay them more. So we know that we're headed in the direction of AI. I think teaching the team this, helping them to understand that this helps them be more secure by adding more value through to the business. And then equally with process, it's the same thing. When we introduce process and a systems-driven approach, we let them know that this is of benefit to them. We want to make sure that when you take a holiday, you can actually have a holiday because your core tasks can get delegated off to another team member to get those things done. So I'm not calling you every 2 seconds. So, I mean, it depends on the individual, but building up this systems culture, I mean, I gave you a big tip right at the start, which was including it in your recruitment process and looking for people who naturally have a bent towards systems. That works okay when you're hiring, but the challenge is always with existing staff. If they're used to doing this a certain way and we're trying to change the way that things are done, that's when you need to think about what's the benefit to them and how can you make this easy and how do you celebrate systems and have system wins and showcase it and let everybody kind of, shine a light on those team members that are embracing this culture. That's a big part of this shift.
Yeah. So praising it, appreciating it publicly as an example, right?
Yep.
Taking it a
Little
big topic of
awards.
conversation.
Yep. Talking about it on team meetings, even kind of just checking in and making that a KPI is to document one of your processes a week, or like there's little things like that you can do. It's a classic case of rewarding the behavior that you want to see.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really glad you brought that up around creating a culture, because it is like a habit change, even like you said, not just for the employees, but for yourself, right? Because if you're not used to doing it, like for a while, I was pretty much the worst one in our company and using the project management tool, the one that I told everyone we got to start using, right? Because you're just so used to doing it your way. And it really is building a habit change. Like, wait, let me stop, or even documenting things, right? Wait, let me stop and make a video of this now so that someone can later do it. So it is a habit change. I think it's great advice around just really focusing on the benefit of it and making sure the team knows the benefit of it. Anything else on that around getting the company on board or building that culture of systems?
The most important role in all of this is the systems champion. That's one of the biggest catalysts to change. So of the, hundreds of companies that I probably worked with personally and thousands indirectly through the book and through some of the content, the ones that crush it always have a systems champion. And that's the person who takes responsibility, who's not the business owner, who has a little bit of capacity to ensure that this constantly gets a little bit of energy and attention. Business owner, always busy, always working on urgent tasks. Very rarely will they see systems and processes, especially in the early days. This changes as the team grows and things mature, but in the early days, they will never have time to work on process because it's important but not urgent, and they only have time for the urgent. So that's why this role of the systems champion is key, because there's times when the business owner can support it and give it energy, and there's times when they can't. And when they can't, you want to make sure that the momentum, even if they're just baby steps, are still
Mm.
moving in the right direction. So, I mean, of the businesses we've worked with, some of the best systems champions, they're junior apprentices. They are like the junior mechanic, the junior lawyer, the junior accountant, the junior digital marketer. It's the
Mm.
person who may have some basic training and they know how to do the technical work. They're brand new into the industry, so they're young and hungry and they want to learn and they're curious, and they make the best people to then say, you know what, I'm going to get you to work with the key team members in our business, and I want you to work with them to find out what are the critical tasks that they're doing. I want you to record it, document it, and help to build up this centralized knowledge base. And
Mm.
I mean, what a gift to give someone also. I mean, that apprentice, to give them this opportunity to learn what it really takes to run a business or a digital agency in this case, in all aspects, from lead gen to sales to operations to some HR stuff and management stuff. You want to make sure that systems touch the entire organization. But if I was going to give one bit of advice that someone takes away from this, it would be that: get yourself a systems champion.
Yeah. And I'm imagining some of the clients you work with, maybe there's someone in house, or maybe they have to go out and find this person. Or can you speak a little bit to that and kind of what you're looking for beyond what you mentioned so far?
Yeah, depending on the size of the organization, sometimes it can be someone's obvious inside the organization. Maybe they have a little bit of capacity, they're naturally a systems person, and you just say, hey, this is going to be your role. Sometimes it can be that you recruit externally, and there's a bit of a spectrum here. Like at one end of the spectrum, you've got a low-skilled systems champion who might be offshore, based in a emerging economy, that you can get really good bang for your buck, but
Mm.
typically will require more direction because they might not have the skills. Or at the other end of the spectrum, you go for someone who is trained in the area or has done process in the past, or, and there's in the middle as well. There's return to work mum or dads that may have had some corporate training that now can't go back into the workforce full time because they've got a young family and they want a part-time gig, and this might be a perfect role for them. Or, as I said, it's that junior apprentice maybe that's in the business, or maybe it's something, you get a new high school or a university graduate who's looking for their first position. There's a lot of different spectrum, and the systems champion you have today, it doesn't need to be the same systems champion in 6 months or 12 months. I mean, as long as you've got that position and someone's in that seat, it means you're constantly moving forward. Like, I remember there's a guy, Den Lenny, who runs a coaching business for videographers, and the first systems champion that he got was a little bit of a dud, and worked with him for 6 months, but he got some things in place. And then I remember he got his second systems champion. She stepped in, Milka, and picked up where the first one left off. So at least she could build on something. And then she was a fantastic standout. So it's just having someone who this is their responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. So someone to and really build all the processes, create the documentation. Are you seeing where this person also ends up potentially like managing people or becoming even like a COO or
Yeah.
that type of roles?
So I've got a few clients in mind where if you do pick the right systems champion, like there's a guy, Ryan Stannard, who runs a company called Stannard Homes out of Adelaide. They're a custom home builder, and his daughter ended up being their systems champion. And I did an interview with him a good few months back, and he has said she has now become the most knowledgeable team member in the organization because everybody else is siloed and they understand their bit.
Yeah.
Whereas she has worked with all of the knowledgeable team members. So she now sees the business as an organization, understands the critical roles in each one of these team members' workload, and is grooming her to be the GM of the business. So I think if you pick that person right, they can also end up becoming potentially an extremely important role in the business.
Yeah. And so what other qualities? So you mentioned, ideally they're a systems person. Can we break that down? Like what, obviously
Yeah.
I'm thinking attention to detail, the first thing that comes to mind, but what else in your eyes are people really looking for?
Yeah, you want someone who's curious, someone who has high follow through and doesn't need to be micromanaged, and as we said, someone who's naturally organized. So maybe they automatically do systems or processes and checklists. Like that's just the way that they are. You need someone who has great communication skills, both in written, but then also when they're like a little bit of a people person to a certain extent, because they have to work with that person, and different people are at different levels, and some are frustrated and some are time poor and some are easy to work with and some are hard to work with. So they have to be able to mold towards the situation. I mean, there are a few of the qualities. It's funny you mentioned that. I just use ChatGPT for everything now. I had this series where I interviewed about 20 different systems champions, and then I got all of them transcribed, and then I loaded it into a document, and then I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, these are all interviews with systems champions. Can you give me the top common qualities that
Cool.
you see amongst all of them? And it did give me a list. So I'll chase that up for you, and I'll send it over, and maybe you include it in the show notes.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We could definitely. So so going back to your journey at Melbourne SEO, what did it look like for you when you initially hired a systems champion? I know you eventually hired like a CEO, if I remember correctly, and pretty much exited the business entirely, right? So how did that look for you?
Yeah. Initially, like it was just to try and take some time out with the young family. And after that, that's when I actually fell out of love with the digital agency life. Like I was in that world for 15 years. I was probably working in it for about 12. The last few years is when I really stepped out and had someone else step in and run it. And then that's why we ended up ultimately closing it, or selling it rather, because a lady who was in a CEO position, she moved back to the States, and then I was kind of like, well, I don't want to step back in it. And that's when we ended up selling it. But I think that final journey, it's almost like this life cycle. And I'd love all business owners to go through it, where you come up with an idea, you start the business, you get it off the ground, you get it to a certain point, you systemize it, and then you start to scale it, and then you step out, and then hopefully it can then like be a self-managed business. It manages itself. And then ultimately having some form of exit, because the exit also, I mean, that oftentimes is one of the biggest paydays that the business owner's going to get. So, and business owners take on a lot of risk and do truckload of work to build up the business. And it's just a shame that a lot of business owners miss out on the biggest payday. Like I said, a lot of business owners, really what they have is just a job. Like it's a business they own, but it's still a job. So I think going through that life cycle, and then it's funny, like I've started back again now with Systemology and System Hub, like came up with the idea, got it going, get it off the ground, still working in it, systemizing it, building out the team, trying to scale it. And ultimately one day, I'm not there yet, but I mean, we build it to sell it, because that's the game.
Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. I got to meet last year Perry Belcher at his mastermind, and he's big on that. He always says every business that you start, you should always have in mind the exit, right? You should always be building with that in mind. I think it's really, really, really good advice for sure. Goes along with what you're saying.
Yeah, I remember hearing someone say it's almost like every day you're selling your business, and if you don't have a buyer, you're effectively the buyer, as in you are buying your business every day. So you want to be building a business that you would want to buy, because you are every single day. And ultimately you want to work towards something where someone else would want to have some interest in buying that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. So then what did so that final step for you, what did that look like of actually, so I think the way I see it, there's kind of like a few levels to it, right? The first one, for which is what most people need, is just to get this in place so the business is repeatable and they're not responsible for all the day-to-day tasks, right? But that final level where you're actually able to step out fully and have a CEO, like what was that like for you? And how did you even go about finding a CEO? Because I think a lot of people that are good at delegating and have systemized a lot, there's still then some limiting belief, like, oh, there's certain thing that I can't let go of, or I can't hire someone to do this, and only this I can do. I've experienced that as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. There's a bit where the further out, like, I mean, you really need to get out of the day-to-day operations, as in the business needs to be able to make money without the business owner, because then the business owner does some of their best work, because they can work strategically and they can work on the bits that are really going to move the needle. So there'll be times they'll jump in and they'll rework systems and processes or innovate or add new things. That's, again, where the business owner adds the most value. When they are in doing the business and it's the same thing day in and day out, they're answering the same questions, they're solving the same problems. That kills the business owner's entrepreneurial life force also. So it's
Yeah.
really important to get to the point where you get out and then you can work on it. And then once you're in that point in time, again, like I think of systemology, there's parts of the business that I'm in, but there's quite a lot where I'm out. I still feel like I have more work to give. Like I see this little project that I'm working on and I'm building it to a certain level and I'm adding my bit in. So getting the CEO at the right time is critical. I've done it right and I've done it wrong. So I did it right with Melbourne SEO Services because towards the end, kind of lost the passion. Like, I mean, that was the right time because I was able to hand over the reins and then assuming you get the right person, I was fortunate. That person was in the business and it was a natural evolution. I've had other experiences in other businesses where I've put a CEO in too early and I still felt like I was working on the business. So what ended up happening is we had two CEOs, which is very confusing for the team.
Yeah.
And they don't know who to take orders from and who's the captain of the ship. And it's because I wasn't actually done. Like I hadn't got to the point where I felt like I had no more work to do. So knowing the right time is critical because you will need to be able to let go and you will need to trust that they can step in. They will make mistakes. The ball will get dropped, but that's also part of the process. So you need to kind of do that. As far as like how and where to find that person, I often find having a small, like someone who has been a business owner before,
Right.
is great. Like I know some business owners will think, I'm no longer employable and I would never take a job with someone else. But there are other business owners that may have been through the ringer and had their own business and for whatever reason it didn't work out and maybe they need more security now. And I mean, they're great people to be a CEO because they understand cash flow and what's important to make the business work and all of the different pieces. And they understand the struggles that business owners go through. And so generally they're the ones that I've seen have the most success, but I've not done it enough to, as far as like, it's not like I've plugged in a CEO hundreds of times.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can speak with particular authority on the topic, like just more my own personal experiences.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's definitely true. You said that there's a lot of people that used to be entrepreneurs that don't want to be. I mean, that was my dad. He sold a company like 30 years ago when I was born, sold it for a few $1 million. And then he was like, I just want to have a job now. I just want to have a simple, just relax a bit more. So I think there's definitely people out there you could find to help run your business for you. Last follow-up question on that. When you look at the journey from, okay, building the initial set of systems, hiring the team, all the way through to the end where you're eventually exiting, I've noticed a struggle I've had and a lot of entrepreneurs I've worked with have had as well is knowing like the right order of, okay, who do I hire? Like I could see kind of how the org chart needs to be 10 steps ahead, but any thoughts you have on knowing like, who the next hire should be, what the next system you should build should be?
I think about it in terms of like if your business is a system, which it is, and there are these subsystems within that system, there's marketing and sales and operations and finance and HR. So there are these subsystems. So effectively, when it's just you're wearing all of the hats. You're responsible for each one of those departments. Each department has a responsibility to the business. And if it fails to deliver that responsibility, the business can either be unhealthy or it can die. So the business needs to generate leads. They need to convert those leads. They need to deliver the product or service. So I'll often think through that lens when I'm thinking around, well, what does the business need and which bits can we hand off? Like the business owner is oftentimes, they've got a superpower in one or two departments. Like they're really good at sales, or maybe they're really good at marketing or operations. So in the early days, you don't want to let go of that because it's going to be hard to recruit for someone to replace that. So, but I'd be thinking about the other areas and you build out the team where someone's responsible for delivery and maybe customer support. Someone's, you've got someone for the finance, there's not an exact particular order, but I mean, I often think if it's just you when you're starting out, admin first.
For sure.
I
Yeah.
think getting to create some space so you can work on higher value tasks, you've got to have some sort of solid bookkeeper or someone who can look after the numbers and make sure that you're meeting your obligations and teams getting paid and all those sorts of things. That needs to be another area. And then depending on where you're strongest, you might recruit someone in like a complementary area, like a sales or a marketing, or it kind of depends. That's in the early stages, and then later, you just have to get good at, and this is something that we're constantly working on, understanding workloads and what the business needs. Like, I try and be dashboard driven as much as possible. Like, hey, we don't have enough leads, or we've got a problem with our conversion on sales, or whatever it is. And then you try and put some attention on that part of the business when you identify that area needs work. Sometimes that's people, sometimes that's re-engineering process. It kind of, and who knows, and shortly it's probably an AI solution. Like,
Yeah.
but
Right.
you gotta need to think about where that pain point is, and you go to work on that.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this last time too. You said like listen to the business, right? And that's where eventually, once you have systems built for each of the departments, start to get the dashboard KPIs for each department, and just kind of then you just kind of float around to see where the problem is or what the next opportunity is.
Yeah.
Awesome, Dave. This was great. Thanks for hopping on the show. I'm really, really grateful for your time today to just, share everything you've learned about systemizing businesses. I know this is really what a lot of people need for sure. And it's not just how to have a better business, but how to have a better life. So thanks for hopping on. And where can people find you?
Yeah. Best place, just, well, we've organized something special for your audience. I know it'll be right near probably the recording of this. I have a bunch of copies of Systemology sitting in my garage, and we were connected. And I said, look, I'd love to be able to give them to your to your audience. So if you're in Australia or the US, I will ship you an actual physical copy. And if you're outside of that, because I know you're in Vietnam, and so you probably got some connections over that way, we'll send you a digital copy, whether it's the PDF or the audio. But that's the best way to get started. And that's probably the best way to find me, because then through there, if you want to dig a little bit deeper and check out the website and the YouTube channel, we've just got a lot of resources that just focus on this topic. This is my jam.
Yeah, awesome. Actually, I have the book right here behind me, and it's definitely a book I plan to just keep rereading every few years to redrill the concepts. It's really more than a playbook and a blueprint, rather than just a book that you read and pick up a couple new ideas. So definitely recommend it. And yeah, thanks for gifting it to all of our members. We'll put a link down below for everyone to grab your free copy.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, AJ.
Appreciate it, man. See you soon.